This is a short proposal about the meaning and use of holes in psychoanalysis. We think of holes as things made to puncture surfaces or penetrate solids, but for Lacan, a true hole is simultaneously a void and a binding. This is what connects the hole to the cut, a significant agency in Lacan's constructions. This has to do with a definition of space not as a container or substance, but as relations. This allows us to talk equally about very abstract kinds of spaces where relations are complex, and the contrasting spaces that resemble Euclidean space with Cartesian axes of height, width, and depth. In the relations of signifiers and subjects, we need both abstraction and familiar references. Lacan defines what he calls a true whole in Seminar 23, the Synthome, where he also talks about James Joyce. In Seminar 13, he has introduced a new way of talking about space in terms of dilation of the cone of vision and cathesis, the way the horizon at infinity seems to rise with the eye as it lifts itself above the ground plane. It's important to note that dilation and cathesis are both agents of equalization, since whatever is concealed behind an object in the cone of vision can move anywhere in this perfect shadow of the unknown, and no matter how high the eye rises above the ground plane, its line of sight will always meet with its double on the ground plane. This equalization justifies the Brownian braid version of the Borromeo rings, since it is within the imaginary that all this equalization takes place, and the rule of the rings is that this equalization has a result, which is to hold the real and the symbolic together. In this role, the imaginary's job is to keep the void a void, by penetrating it and not filling it. Can we think of holding something open by movement? I think this is actually a very common idea whenever fluids are involved. Think of the imaginary as a plumbing system, and the symbolic as an electrified space of relations, and the real as the generating power of the space. When Lacan uses axonometric drawings of parallel planes in Seminar 13, it is to show how two kinds of distances are equalized within perspective. The parallel planes meet at the horizon, so it doesn't matter how high the eye is above the ground plane. The h of the eye's plane will always extend to the same horizon line at infinity. We can measure delta 1 locally. It must always be greater than 0 for the space to be possible. But essentially the two planes will meet at the edge. The same goes for the distance of the subject S from the picture plane P. These parallel planes will also meet at infinity. The two planes must be held apart, but the distance between them will eventually be 0. The L-Schema invites us to compare the flow of vision in perspective to the exchange of signifiers in the analytical session, which is also a space of relations. This new adaptation would put the eye in the starter position of the L-Schema, where the S, or S without the bar, is shown in pre-subjective, pre-symbolic form. This is the beginning and end of the process of analysis. The unconscious exists because the symbolic requires suppression, bad memory, lies, and faulty instructions. The real is at a disadvantage, but it will get its revenge if this diagonal line can be breached. It is like the line through the true hole. We have to think again of plumbing. The symbolic does what it does to suppress the real, but sometimes it clogs the system of the imaginary. It fills it up with fantasies, but many of these are troublesome, even toxic. They are not aligned. If we bring in the analyst, the function of the eye is to impose a rule of dilation to clean up the mess of the imaginary. Think of the analyst as a kind of plumber. This involves getting the analysand to unplug the system, not by confessing anything, but by aligning fantasies and phobias so that the edges conform, to see how one eclipses the other, how the cone of the other's vision is a perfect shadow. The equalization function of dilation works to atomize the analysand's speech, to encourage random connections. The blah 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 is, in comparison to ordinary speech, an aerosol of atomized particles that can move freely inside the perfect shadow of the imaginary. The analyst controls the aim of the imaginary line and has some ability to change its focus and depth of field. Think of the analyst as the camera operator wearing headphones, listening for instructions from the unconscious. These come in acousmatic waves, which register only timing, rhyme patterns, silent stretches, and noisy overlaps. The analyst has to train his or her ear to this acousmatics, but it is the important la langue of the unconscious that occasionally comes through in the analysand's blah blah blah. When the analyst hears a pattern, he or she can manipulate the dilation of the cone of vision, first by maintaining the fluid state of things by getting analysands to atomize their signifiers, second by holding the extromissive gaze steady to the point where there emerges a reverse perspective, much like that experienced by pilgrims visiting religious icons, when things flip from looking at the religious figure to the figure looking back at them.